It was raining, as the weather app had promised. His eyes tearful after confirming the business had failed, and his life was once again in shatters. A new promise of starting everything over again was on the horizon, but not the bright promise of the future he had dreamt about months before. The clouds were dark, the air stuffy, and frustration mixed with sadness was imploding inside him as his anger grew stronger. The tears rolled down his face mercilessly as the emotions were too heavy to bear. Sitting in front of the window, he buried his face in his hands and allowed the commotion to take over, whilst the heavy rain poured outside, mirroring his own spirit. The only question in his mind was, why? Years of effort crashed by a single decision that would determine the next months, maybe the next few years. He didn't know if he would have the strength to start all over again or the will. In that moment, he just abandoned himself to the emotions. The next day, he woke up alone in his room with a powerful headache. He looked around, wondering where he was. Same room, different perspective. He gazed out of the window. The skies were grey, though not as dark as the day before. He stared at the skies as thoughts scrolled through his mind. How could decisions out of his control have such an impact on his life and affairs? How could it be possible that life could change so drastically in so little time? Why was he not able to prevent it from happening? He felt his throat drying up, unable to grasp air. He searched for water, forcing himself to go to the kitchen. As he sat down, gulping some water, he noticed a letter through the corner of his eye on the opposite side of the table. He grabbed it and read it. It was a bank letter from some months ago. The letter reminded him of how troubled the times were then for all businesses. He started to think of all the changes he had to put in place to keep the business afloat. Nights spent rolling in bed, unable to fall asleep, wondering how he would make it work. He recalled the first time he thought about selling the business. It was an evening when one of his best friends came over for a drink. They sat in the pub discussing how things were getting tougher in the country's economy. Then, his friend asked if he had ever considered selling the business. It struck like a lightning bolt. Everything made sense at that moment. Maybe he could sell it, spare the collapse of the business, and spare himself from bankruptcy. Months later, he saw that idea crumble into pieces when the buyers pulled out of the sale, and he ran out of money. It was the end of years spent building a dream from scratch with his own hands, time, and money. The business had brought out so much from him, good and bad. The relentless work to make an idea become a reality and to keep it alive. Only he knew how much it took from him. Time spent with family and friends. He missed so many happy photographs due to business commitments, valuable time that he would never recover. His youth, vigor, and health, now everything was gone. One more failure to his portfolio. This time it felt heavier than ever before. It was not the first time he had to restart life, but this time it felt different. How do you restart from a dead dream? He walked outside and felt the brisk wind on his face. His friend showed up around the corner, walking towards him, and embraced him in a heartfelt hug. A confidant of so many of his struggles, his friend knew the need for such a hug. They sat down on a park bench, staring at the skies, now with some sunny spales. He started by ranting about how he had lost everything. His friend kept silent for a moment. "Not sure if that is the case," his friend replied. "What do you mean?" he asked, shocked by his friend's words. "You see, we are more than a part of our lives. You might have lost your business, money, and past time. But as long as you don't lose yourself, life is still possible," the friend remarked. Suddenly, he realized that he had not lost everything. He still had his friend, he was still alive. And he had a bag full of experiences, learnings, and skills developed whilst building a dream into reality the hard way, which he could use to build new dreams in a smarter way. As long as hope was not gone, he could still find a way forward.